Now, the Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Vietnam following his visit to North Korea, where he met the Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un.
Yes, the two leaders have signed a mutual defence pact, which has raised concern among Western leaders, especially over the potential for Russian aid to North Korea's missile or nuclear programmes.
Let's talk to the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Morning, Robert. Even just from the headlines, it gets the hairs on the back of your neck going.
Yeah, there's a big problem that we don't really know what Mr. Kim gets in return, apart from a lot of food. It's interesting that they're super militarised, as we could see. A population of 25 million, huge armed forces, starving population. He wants food, he wants Russian fuel, and the real kicker is what are they exchanging on nuclear technology and missiles. We know what Putin wants, which is just millions of shells, amongst other things, and missiles.
Because Kim Jong-un has said it's strictly peace-loving and defensive in nature, but it's the defensive part that is concerning, isn't it? Because that could mean anything.
Only if we're attacked. Oh, yeah. But what Kim Jong-un went on to say was that this is part of the alternative world system. And this is the thing as to why Putin, who doesn't travel much, as we know, has gone to there and gone to Vietnam, which is an old customer, and wants a lot of its old Russian stuff upgraded, whether Russia can do that or not. China is building a system which they say will be the rival to the rules-based order, which means Western dominance by America, and it is serious. And I think that, in a way, Putin is locking the door prior to another big, now you see me, now you don't, offensive, not only in Ukraine, Moldova. They're up to something. That's what I'm saying. And he knows he's got very little time to do it. He's got to get to a decision point over Ukraine and possibly showing that they have lots of muscle in the Arctic and so on. Talking a lot about maritime power. He's got about 18 months, I think, to keep going at the present rate.
But can I just ask, where this relationship with Kim, where does that leave China and Russia in their relationship?
I think China will be very wary about this, but this is a sort of Game of Thrones conspiracy thing, because I think one of the things that Putin loves, this rather crazy ceremony, is to show that I am still a power. Russia is a great international power. Because in the recent meetings with China, getting the Chinese backing, overt and stated, for Ukraine, which had been a bit iffy up to that point, China made it clear that they are in charge, that they're the boss, they're the big wheel in the penny farthing, and Russia is the little wheel. And if you look at the economies of them, that is absolutely so. Putin resents that because Putin sees Russia as a great international power, the key to Europe, funnily enough, sitting in the middle of Europe and Asia, and that's what a lot of it's about power play. But as Stephen is saying, it's the ugly stuff underneath, because they are working on fancy missiles, on space weapons, I suspect, as well, and that is worrying. And that's where China, no friend to the West, may want to put the brakes on some of this, because Kim is a big threat to them, because he threatens, if the thing collapses, which is always a threat of with the North Korean economy, starvation and so on, it's hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of refugees pouring into China, which they do not want.
What could this pact mean for the war in Ukraine?
I think it's just cementing the supply of ammunition. South Korean intelligence said that they had tracked a shipment of containers by rail and by sea, I think, of 4,200,000 shells. It's to keep the supply line going. But if Russia really needs that, boy, things are not so buoyant. And we know 40% of the economy is now devoted to this war. And it was a tremendous boast the other day that Putin, he said, had over 700,000 to 750,000 personnel totally devoted to the special military operation. Well, if that's really so, that's inside Ukraine and on the borders. If that's really so, they ain't doing too well, are they?
Could we see North Korean fighters in Ukraine?
I think that would be very reluctant. But what this does, which is a bit we must talk about, I know we're election focused, and quite rightly, on July the 4th, July the 5th, we will have whatever stripe, a new defence secretary, new prime minister, new foreign secretary. Within 5 days, they've got to go to Washington at a celebratory summit of NATO, 75 years. I don't think the candles will even be lit, let alone blown out, because there is such a big agenda as to what NATO has got to do. And NATO is saying to the UK, actually, you're spending quite a bit on defence, but you're not spending it effectively enough. Get your act together. We need real help with UK leadership, given where France and Germany are politically, in keeping NATO strong, confronting, not threatening, the possible expansion of Russia and Belarus in the war in the East.
Just before we go, because I know we're tight for time, Robert.
Sorry, it's a bit complicated.
No.
It's
but
very complicated.
Because it's so important. The possibility of a Trump presidency in November, how does that play into... Will this strengthen the West in this or not? Because, of course, his relationship with NATO is problematic.
I think there's been a lot of writing about this. I'll be very quick about it. I think, and it will bring charges of the deep state, the military, particularly diplomacy, administration, industry in the US are prepared for this. And they are saying, and quite a substantial section of the Republican Party is saying, no, we go on with Ukraine. We know migration, the Pacific, our worries and major focuses, but this goes on. But they are absolutely sure we want NATO, Europe NATO, to do a lot more. And that's why it's significant that they put a real old pro and twisted his arm to do it, Mark Rutte, in to lead the alliance as the new Secretary General, Mark Rutte of the Netherlands.
OK. Robert, good to see you.